Hey kids, back to me teaching again. Miss Debbie's got to teach you the last week. I'm going to go ahead and do our devotion as we always do. And today we're going to be talking about David. And we all know who David is. And today is about two kings in a cave. David was only a young shepherd when God chose him to be the next leader of Israel. And it was a special job, and David was eager to do it, but he had to wait. It wasn't quite time yet for him to take over being king. King Saul was still the king, and you remember that David would even play the harp for King Saul when he was feeling sad, and he was best friends with King Saul's son Jonathan. And so he was around King Saul a lot, so he knew it wasn't time yet. He was still young, and King Saul was still ruling over the Israelites. It wasn't David's turn yet, and David was famous and becoming more popular, and many men had started to follow him. And they wanted David to be king and thought he had a right to take over Saul's kingdom. And Saul was scared of David, and he wanted to get rid of him. And one day Saul was out looking for David to hurt him. And Saul decided to rest in a cave, and he thought he was alone. But David and his men were hiding in the back of the cave. And David's men whispered to him that this was his chance to become the king. And so he said, if you kill Saul, then you could take over his kingdom. But David knew that wasn't God's way for him to become king. So he trusted God to keep his promise at the right time. And David didn't hurt Saul because he knew it was the best thing to do and to do God's will. But one thing he did do was cut the corner off of King Saul's robe. And that's how close he was to him that he could have hurt him, and he chose not to. Because he used self-control. And self-control is the last one in our fruits of the Spirit, and that's what he practiced. So David showed self-control. He could have done something bad to make himself more important, but that would have gone against what God's law was. So David chose to be patient, which is another one, and let God work out his plan. And one day, God did make David the king, just as he said he would. We can learn from David and practice self-control too. Someday, someone might tell you to do something to make yourself more important, but if it's something that goes against God's plan, remember David, that God blessed him because of his obedience. And we've talked about this before, that people try to get you to do something that is not right, and always go back to what is right and wrong. And you have that little voice inside of you that tells you, yes, this is right, or no, don't do that, this could happen. Then you have another one, nobody's gonna know about it, and so you're just back and forth, but we're always supposed to do the right thing. And the Bible verse that we think of when in this story is out of 1 Samuel, which is Old Testament. This very day you have seen with your own eyes how the Lord handed you over to me in the cave. Some of my men begged me to kill you, but I spared you. I said, I will never lift my hand to strike my master down. He is the Lord's anointed king. So even though David, he could have been in a hurry and, well, if I just kill him, I can go ahead and become king. All the people like me, I'm more popular, but he chose to do what was right. And he knew that God's timing was the perfect timing. And sometimes it's hard for us to wait on things that we want to do, but we must, because it won't work out if it's not time for it to happen. And if we wait on God, it will be a whole lot better. And today's story is actually something we had talked about several weeks ago, is about praying for Peter when Peter was in jail. And then because prayer is a very important thing. And God invites people to have a conversation with him, and the way they do that is by prayer. That's all prayer is talking to someone. You can't have a friend, make a friend with someone, but you never talk to them. They don't talk back to you. How can you possibly be friends? There's no communication. You don't know anything about them. They don't know anything about you. And so you can't have a relationship with someone that you don't talk to. Well, God is the same way. We are His children, but He wants us to talk to Him just like we talk to our parents. And like for instance, Sunday, the Sunday is Father's Day. Well, if you never talk to your dad, how are you going to have any memories of things that you did talk about, things he taught you to do, things you did together, um, things you laughed about? Just all kinds if you never had anything to do with them, it would be, you wouldn't have much of a relationship with your dad. And so God is our Father, and the same thing, we should talk to Him. And we talk to Him, we don't have to talk a certain way, because, oh, we think we have to talk that way because it is prayer. No, that's not it. We talk to Him just like we talk to each other. And so conversation with God is very important. And He loves us and wants to have relationship with us. So He created prayer as a way of communication. And what a privilege it is for us to be able to talk to one that created our world. I chose to sit outside this evening and do my teaching. And it's nice out. There's a few little bugs. I hope they don't get on me. That was a mosquito. And I freak out during my teaching. But anyhow, let's say a prayer for that Miss Karen doesn't get some kind of bug on her. So, and we can pray about all kinds of stuff, and that's one that would be important to me. But throughout the book of Acts, Luke recorded how believers in the early church experienced the power of prayer. And one of these instances was when Peter was in jail. He had been arrested, and also King Herod had already killed James. And there was a feast going on, and so probably after this feast, they were probably going to kill Peter as well. So his friends, his church friends, and other followers of Christ knew this. And so they began to pray for Peter. So because it would more than likely happen to him. But so even though they prayed, they were like not believing that it was really going to happen. They hesitated to believe that God would answer their prayers. Remember, I told you that was so silly. Why would we ask God for anything if we're not going to believe He's going to give it to us? And not that He gives us everything we want. He gives us what we need. And if it's going to hurt us, sometimes He doesn't let us have it. If it's not going to be good for us, He protects us from it. And there was only one person that believed Peter was at the door, and that was Rhoda that we had talked about, that she answered the door, and she was the only one. And then they were acting like she was crazy because she said he was out there. But we'll go ahead and read our story now about people praying for Peter. Peter was one of Jesus's disciples. Herod put Peter in prison for telling others about Jesus. Soldiers guarded Peter. They guarded him day and night. 24 hours a day. There was always someone watching him. So his church friends prayed to God for Peter, and they prayed and they prayed and they prayed. And one night Peter was sleeping between the soldiers, and an angel appeared and woke him up. It said, "Quick, get up," the angel said, and the chains just fell off of his wrist. They didn't have to have a key to open them up. They just unlocked and fell off his wrist. And so the angel told Peter to get his clothes and his sandals on. He said, "Follow me." And so Peter followed the angels, and here the guards were sleeping next to him and never woke up. So Peter followed the angel, but he did not know if this was really happening or if he was just dreaming. So Peter and the angel walked past the guards and through the gate and out onto the street. And then the angel left Peter. He just disappeared. So Peter realized he was not dreaming. So he knew that God had rescued him from the prison, and he went to the house where his church friends were praying for him, and he knocked at the door. And a girl told the people that Peter was at the door. They did not believe her. When they realized that Peter had really been set free, they were excited. But at first they were like, "Are you crazy? He's in prison. They're guarding him day and night. There's somebody watching him constantly. How could he be at the door?" But yet they were asking God to do that. And so Peter explained to them all the things that happened, just how God had brought him out of prison and how he was asleep. The guards were asleep, and the angel appeared to him, told him get up and get his sandals. and the guards never woke up. And you know, it had to make noise. If those big chains just fell off his wrist, you know, it had to cling and clang. But God didn't allow those guards to wake up. And so then he took him out of the gate, and then he disappeared. And so he explained every detail to him. Now, only God can make things like that happen. The things that are impossible, that seem impossible to us, those are the kind of things that God likes to do and show off to us, that we have no doubt that it is from him. So then Peter left for a safe place, and in the morning the prison guards looked for Peter. They woke up, couldn't find him, but they could not find him, and they didn't know what happened to him. So all we know is God heard and answered the people's prayer. So however minor it is or however big it is, you believe for it. But one thing we are supposed to do is ask God if it is in your will. And when I pray and I'm asking God for something, sometimes I'll say, you know, but if I'm not supposed to have it, don't let me have it. If it's not going to be good for me, or I'm going to be sorry, I don't want it. Don't let me have it. And so I always trust. Sometimes he answers, sometimes he gives me what I want, sometimes he doesn't. And I always say that we live life forward. We're moving forward and living our life moving forward, but we understand it backwards. Because after things happen, later down the road, we think, um, if I would have got what I wanted, look what could have happened, you know. And so, and that wouldn't have been a good thing. So God protects us. Say maybe that I wanted to buy something that was really expensive, and I'll think, oh, I don't have the money to pay for it, but I'll make payments. Okay, well, I'll do that. Well, then I do it, and then I have this payment, and then I don't have any work. My work is slow, and I have to stay at home and don't get paid. Well, now I went and did what I wanted anyhow, even though I didn't ask God for it, and should it be a good thing? And then I'm sorry because now I don't have money to pay for it. That's just an illustration of a grown-up thing. Um, but you kids can pray for anything you want. I always tell the kids, like, um, ask God for help. Like Colton just started ball back, and and I prayed that God would help him, that he would be calm in what he's doing. He would not overreact in any way that he shouldn't act. That he would keep a steady head and focus on what he's doing, not worry about anything else, have a good time, and just enjoy himself. But we can ask God to help us in sports. We can ask God to help us in our studies. If we're reading something or doing one of our lessons from school, we just don't understand it. And so that's what we say: God, I cannot understand this. I'm having a problem. I need you to help me. Help me to focus and be clear, and help me to understand it, and help me to do good with my work. There's nothing wrong with that. Um, if we want to have a get together with our kids, with our friends, maybe you children want to have something together and have a boys' night out, or spend the night party, or a girls, and you really want to do that, well, you can ask God, oh, you know, that would be so much fun. I'd really like to do that. Maybe that can happen. And then, you know, ask God to, like when you ask your mom and dad, can it happen? You know, God can tell them yes or no. And so then we can ask for, you know, it doesn't matter, just any little thing or big things. But we should ask God that if it is not good for us, don't let me have it. Or don't, you know, answer in the way, because he knows what's going to happen later. We don't. He knows the end all the way from the beginning. He knows what's going to happen at the end. We don't. We just see day to day. And we know what we want. We know what we'd like to do. But he knows what's going to happen later. And so, but it's important for us to talk to God every day. Like, you know, I would ask you when you come in class, who woke you up this morning? And after you were in there a while, you would always answer, God woke me up, because it may have been mommy came in there and told you to get up, but if God didn't let you breathe, you wouldn't have got out of bed that morning. So that's something that I like to thank God for, is thank you for giving me a good night's rest. Thank you for opening up my eyes this morning. Thank you for the house I live in and the food I have to eat, the clothes I have to wear, the car I have to drive, the job I have to go to, the health I have that I can work. All these things, there are so many people that don't have what I have. And I'm not a rich person, but I'm a happy person. And happy is so much more important than money or anything money can buy. And if you have a happy family, you love your mom and dad, and they love you, your brothers and sisters, and you've got a house, you've got food, you've got clothes, you got friends, you are very blessed, and you're not crippled. You can walk, you can play. There's lots of children that can't. They're in wheelchairs. They are sick maybe with cancer. There are things that you don't even realize, how many children cannot just get out of bed, get up, and go eat your breakfast, go out and play. There are some children that cannot do that. Some children may have to be fed, that they can't move their arms or legs, or their mind doesn't let them be able to do those things. There are so many things you can be thankful for as a child, and thankful that you have a mom and dad. Um, and so let's just make sure that we talk to God every day, and the best way to be happy is to be thankful and to think about all the good things. Of course, we're going to have bad things in our life and sad things in our lives, but most of us have a lot more happy than we do sad. So I miss you kids. I do get to see some of you at church since we got to come back now. And one day we'll get back in our classroom and have our leaders, have our candy, and go back to the way it was. And until then, we're like this. But I miss you. God bless you.